Welcome to another episode of Transcendence Talks podcast. I'm your host, Kristy, and I'm here with my friend and special guest, Maggie Clark. Maggie is an astrologer. She reads the tarot, and she's just exceptionally talented at what she does. So welcome to the show, Maggie.
Thank you so much for having me. It's truly an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. So gosh, I think it's been like maybe 18 months that you've been reading my astrology for me and for my family on a regular basis. And I just want to share before we start this story because my first reading with you blew my mind in a way that was so unsuspecting. I think it was early 2024. It was probably early spring or maybe even late winter. And I had a reading with you, and I remember you saying something like, are you planning on writing a book? I was like, no. And you go, well, let me just kind of move some things forward. And you had my chart there and you moved the needle forward. And you were like, well, if you're going to write a book, September would be a great time for you to do it. And I'm thinking, it's maybe been in the back of my mind, but like no plans or anything. And that summer, like right around my birthday, it was this process of spiritual awakening on like 2.0 kicked in my life. And this book was downloaded into my body, into my cells over that summer. And I didn't have an editor. I didn't have a publisher. I didn't know how to write a book. So I just told Spirit, help me. If you want me to do this, then help me. And wouldn't you know it, that in September, that's when I linked up with my publisher and wrote my first book. And ever since then, I think I've been calling you quarterly just to read the map.
Well, it's interesting how astrology is so accurate. You can look and understand how certain things can happen. It doesn't mean that you had to write the book, you weren't forced to, but the energy was primed for it. And you can see those things based on transiting planets and how it affects your natal chart.
So, as you talk about it, I just want to educate the audience because there's a science to it, and there's certainly an art form because that's the part of Maggie that comes into the reading. There's the science which you're skilled at, but then there's what you bring to it too. But I think and tell me if I'm wrong, but it's almost like after meeting with you regularly, the way I conceptualize it feels like as souls we work with God. Like this is a time that I want to be born because I want these influences for my soul's journey, is what this feels like to me when I read with you.
Absolutely, because every person chooses their time of birth, their place of birth, their parents, their culture, their upbringing. We're responsible for those choices, and it's our own divine nature to accept that responsibility. When we do, we empower ourselves. So astrology has always been a branch to empower who you are because you chose these energetics before you were even born. We knew the planetary alignments, we knew their orbits, we knew how things were going to impact us when we chose these things. So looking ahead, you can interpret a lot. Everything is interpreted with astrology, but over time, and especially over the last 100 years, there's so much research. There's so much accumulation of data and sharing of information of that interpretive aspect of what planetary alignments, zodiac alignments, house placements. And so, but we know when before we're born, these things are going to happen. The stars are going to turn. The planets are going to keep themselves in an orbit until they don't. And until then, we work within our solar system very, very intricately. And I like to describe it as if you would walk into a room at a party and you had all these big personalities showing up. These are all the planets that are showing up, and you can feel their energy. You can feel their presence. So we here on Earth are feeling these planetary energies. We're feeling their vibrational patterns as they're aspecting each other and aspecting parts of us that are connecting to that. And when we can look at it in the eyes of a chart in astrology, we can see how everything is connecting, integrating, being activated, being let go of, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, the specificity and the detail that you're able to share has completely blown my mind. And one thing I wanted to talk about today too was obviously it's very personal. It's fascinating because the stars are something that are universal. The planets are universal. It's something we all experience, but the way they impact us is on such a profoundly personal level, but also globally. I mean, there are undeniable shifts that are happening. I think that we're all subjected to and feeling, especially right now. It's been a really active month astrologically this September. We're recording now in September 2025. And I'm hoping you can just speak to that, maybe just globally, what we're all feeling right now and how these influences are impacting our evolution.
Yes, and we're in an eclipse sandwich right now. It's September 14th. So we just had the, total lunar eclipse. So we're coming up to a partial solar eclipse and then the equinox. And during this time, we have a lot of really, really cool, juicy, yummy energy that's happening between the Virgo and Pisces axis. Because we had the lunar eclipse in Pisces, we are going to have the solar eclipse in Virgo. And these are 180 degrees apart on a wheel. So Virgo is about your service, your work, your health, how you organize things, how you put things into a tidy little box and make it perfect, how you like to control things, how you like to make everything fit. It is mutable earth, so there's some mutation to that, so you can be a little bit fluid with it, but it also aids to how you manifest the work and the service that you do in the world. The other side of that is Piscean energy, which is compassion, your divine nature, how you dissolve those boxes that Virgo built, saying, wait, we're all one. There's no separation, there's unification. And so we're having a conversation between a mutable earth sign, Virgo, and a mutable water sign, Pisces. And Pisces just wants to throw you all into the ocean of consciousness and
Mhm.
just let everything be washed away, dissolve in the middle of the ocean so you can be reborn. And there was so much energy from the eclipses in the spring that were rebirthing an aspect of who you were. When Saturn and Neptune went into Aries together in the spring, when we had the eclipses that were in Pisces and Aries, we could see that there was a dissolving of this old paradigm, this old belief system, what once was of the nature of who we are individually and collectively. And how do we let that go so we can give birth to a new vision of who we are? That's a process, especially when we're thinking about the evolution of consciousness of humanity. You don't evolve overnight. You can have awakening experiences that activate you, get you kind of keyed in and clued into certain vibrational frequencies. And after that, you really want to look at how do you finish birthing, right? You're still in the womb, you're still pushing the baby out. That takes a while when we're thinking about a whole race of beings that are evolving consciously to find our place in the galactic family. That takes a while to go. But this whole year is really looking at some of those bigger themes of how are we here to serve? How are we here to connect to our own divine nature? How do we let go of everything that said we needed it outside of us or in a certain field or organized religion or paradigm that we were taught? And then how do we give birth to the vision of who we truly are once we find our soul in that Piscean theme? So in Pisces, we will find that compassion for humanity. We will find our path of service in the all that is. We will find who we are spiritually. And when we do that, we let go of so much. So we're in a process of letting go of so much and rebirthing so much. And then we also have the three outer planets that are ruling evolutionary and revolutionary themes. They're all in brand new signs. We've got Pluto at 1 degree of Aquarius, we have Neptune at 1 degree of Aries, and we have Uranus at 1 degree of Gemini. And they're all interacting with each other beautifully. Whether they're sextiling or trining, these outer planets are having this conversation. They're pulling energy together, almost infusing the earth and all the inhabitants that are here, infusing the earth with this cosmic consciousness that is growing and expanding into territories we haven't seen in hundreds of years. And never have we seen this in our lifetime. So it's very rich and powerful and expansive. And it's all meant to kind of wake us up to who we truly are, how we can be more of that authenticity, and not just individually, because we're all feeling that individually, yes,
Mhm.
but we're also feeling, what is the human becoming?
That question, and you see so many facets of that question, I think, in a broader conversation that we're having now. So I'm hoping to take some of this juicy information about what's going on and really distill it down. What does that mean? Because there's the AI conversation, who are we becoming as humans? Are we going to find ourselves and reconnect with our souls? Are we going to stop deferring our power out to other people and learn how to see that we don't need an intermediary to connect with source, or are we going to give our power away to AI? And I think that's a big debate right now in what's happening in the human trajectory or where we end up. And honestly, for me, it's very reminiscent of Atlantean times. You know, when we look back at Atlantis, it's almost as if we're in this karmic loop that's trying to circle back to some kind of completion, because in Atlantean times, technology got wildly out of hand. It's like it grew more rapidly than our consciousness did. And karmically, it feels like there's a very similar cycle or loop that we're exploring as humans and what that means to be human. Not to mention, there's different institutions that people are leaving, walking away from. We're reimagining what government should look like. And right now, there's less imagining what the future looks like and more disassembling what is or rejecting what is. So it's very interesting times. It's very unsettling for a lot of people.
You know, one of my mentors said, "We are pallbearers to the old age and midwives to the new age." And death and birth are both painful. And this is what we are experiencing on this planet, the death of an old age. Have the death of that Piscean age and the birth of the Aquarian age. And it takes a nice big chunk of time to really see the effects of that. But we're living that fully right now in our psyche and our consciousness. And we have a lot of aspects with Piscean energy that is dissolving old karmic ties, and it's dissolving old belief systems. It's dissolving a lot of things. This is a time where the healing that Virgo wants us to do and that Chiron wants us to do in Aries is to really heal who we are within ourselves so that we can dissolve the conditioning, the paradigms. And we're not just dealing with one lifetime, guys. We are dealing with 2,000 plus years of things that have run through our DNA, run through our ancestral lines, that has run through cultures and how they've been molded and created. So when you are healing yourself, you are healing the whole. And it's really important to understand from the macrocosm to the microcosm to the macrocosm. If you're doing your personal work, if you are growing into your vibration of love and you're exuding your light and your goddess essence and your frequencies in the world, you're doing the work that's needed to change the world. You don't have to do all the other things that people tell you have to do. You can stay in your lane, whatever that looks like. But remember who you are as a soul and allow those higher frequencies to come to the fore and express them and be them however you choose to and however you find yourself in life being able to as well.
I love that you said that because I wholeheartedly agree. Because time is just an illusory construct, when we do heal, I've seen it firsthand how that ripple not only frees our children, it frees our grandparents, it frees our parents. And there's a feeling that comes in when we're doing this healing work where you can see people's grandparents, their ancestors coming in and literally celebrating, freeing their spirit, whether they're here in this realm or they've graduated on to the next one. And it's so beautiful because you're right, the impact, the ripple goes into infinite. They say that in a twinkling of an eye, everything could change. And I believe that because I think that as we individually raise our consciousness to higher frequencies and we can embody more of that light, it nullifies the lower energy. So you're right, there's nothing we have to do. There's nothing
We
we have
rise
to do.
above it. Yeah.
Mhm.
We just by being, and we don't even know how powerful we are, but just by being, we raise those vibrations. We move out of lower frequencies and we just allow that to happen, and there is a lot of judgment right now in the world. There's a lot of crazy energy that wants to kind of pull you back into the dramic field. And you get to choose every moment. Do you play in that or do you play in something else? I've been accused of burying my head in the sand, of being the eternal optimist. And I'll take it. I'll take it every day. If that's what gives me peace of mind and that allows me to connect to these higher vibrations, I'm going to do that. And we each have our own journey. We each have our own understanding and our own perspective. And they're all valuable. They're all a part of the
Absolutely.
whole, because what we're ultimately going to return to is you are my sister and you are my brother and we are one. And there is no separation between us. And
Absolutely.
when we come into that frequency, that is the new age that's being born. And AI can't touch that, by the way. AI doesn't have the heart to feel that. AI doesn't have the consciousness to really understand and feel what that means as an eternal soul. Now, will it? Can it? I mean, I was a big fan of science fiction books when I was younger. Isaac Asimov, Orson Scott Card, they all talked about this concept of AI having sentience. And it always fascinated me, like, could that happen? Well, we're in those times where we're watching to see if it could happen or if we feel like it could happen. And some people do feel like it has a sentience already,
Mhm.
even though it's so fresh, right, into our culture.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like to read about it, learn about it, and if there's only one field of consciousness, it does make you wonder, can AI filter that stream of
Well,
awareness?
see, there isn't just one field, and that's the cool thing. We are too multidimensional for that. There are so many different dimensional fields of consciousness that we can navigate and that we do navigate. We navigate our psychic senses, we navigate our intuition, we navigate our bodies and its needs, our body's intelligence, we navigate society. We're navigating so many different places, not even to mention your past lives, your connection to your star seeds. Like, you're very multidimensional. We're all very multidimensional. So AI, can they touch the multidimensionality is the
Yeah,
question. Can they
yeah,
filter through it all? Probably not, because who can program that? We can't
right.
program that. We can't program telepathy. It is just something that's there, right? We
Mhm,
can't program
mhm.
our hearts being open to love. It's just something we feel.
Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating and so scary all at the same time. But I believe fundamentally technology is neutral, and I believe that it's the consciousness that's stewarding the technology that determines whether it can be used to help humanity and steer it in a direction where it frees us up in some ways, or if it can do harm. And so I feel like our work is to raise the consciousness on the planet so that we can be the stewards of technology that we need to be, because it's evolving. Whether we like it or not, it's evolving. And this is just where we're headed.
And who's programming it?
Yep.
I mean, it's not just everyone in the United States. We have definite political factors and different nations that are programming their own, and how does that all come together? How will that play together? We don't even know. If one
Mhm.
thing is programmed to have one way of thinking and another way is programmed to have another way of thinking, what happens then?
I know.
Like,
It's so
we have
new.
no idea. Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very new.
So, is there anything that you've seen in astrology that helps to dictate that, or like give us clues into what is this new iteration of humanity? Because we're all talking about, Homo luminous, right? How do we step into our light bodies? Because I think ultimately that's, in my opinion, that's where we're evolving to. We've descended as humans to experience limitation, to experience perceived separation. And we've been given a blueprint to ascend again and to come back into our light bodies when we're ready. And what does astrology say about that?
Well, honestly, Uranus is in Gemini, which really, really activates a liberation of the conditioned mind. So Gemini is what you think about, it's how you communicate, it's our thought patterns. And so when Uranus is there, it's liberating our minds. It's basically plucking out all the bull caca, right? And
Yeah.
replacing it with some new modernized, liberated mindset. And so that's happening for everybody right now. And it's kind of activating everyone to say, "Oh my god, it's possible," right? To wake up a little bit, to liberate their minds. And Uranus is going to retrograde back into Taurus, which is going to muck up more of our financial system and us feeling safe in the world and feeling like we have what we need. And then it'll go back into Gemini next year in the springs. We're in this transitional period, even astrologically, where we're being introduced to some frequencies, some vibrations that can wake us up, that can help us along. But we are going to have to take a deeper dive look at ourselves, especially this winter, about the things that are really evolving and shifting within us and what do we really need or not need from that. And I think Uranus and Gemini is a big, big, big player in that deconstruction of the mind and also introducing new thought patterns to help us understand how limitless we are. Because Uranus wants to be limitless. It wants to be the rebel. It wants to be the one that can just break things free and have bolts of lightning that just tear down the tower that you live inside, and your own psyche can just crumble to the ground, and it's going to be okay. It is going to be
Right.
okay. And these outer planets having such a nice synergy with the sextiles and the trines right now make it feel somewhat safe for us to do this in a way.
Mhm.
Pluto is in Aquarius. So Pluto is destroying the Capricorn age, destroying the patriarchy, destroying and tearing down and death and decay and transformation. Pluto is just a beast, by the way, but it's tearing down the old way of using your energy in the world. That's when Pluto was in Capricorn. Now it's in Aquarius. It wants to tear down anything that limits you from group consciousness, from the we are one energy. So that's having a profound effect. And Neptune in Aries is more of the higher self, like integrating a vision of who you are through the higher self connections, like really feeling into what isn't concrete. You can't even actually see it. Neptune is hazy. It's an illusion or a delusion, but it's something you can't see, but you feel deeply. So we're being asked to feel deeply into a few things. One, who am I? Two, what is this life force energy and how does this connect me to my soul, right? Because this is
Mhm.
powerful medicine, that and powerful energy. The most powerful energy on the planet is you. It is your eternal life force energy that flows through you. It is that spiritual energy. It's the channel that runs up through your chakras. It could be kundalini. It could just be sexual energy, sensual energy, spiritual energy. It's all the same energy. We just label
Mhm.
it different and use it in different ways, but we're waking up to the power of that so that we can take action with our own energy. Take responsibility. But right now we're still feeling into the vision of that. But with Saturn and Neptune conjunct in Aries, Saturn is going to try to make that a reality. So, we look outside ourselves a lot to feel powerful. But what if your own power, everything you ever needed to transform your whole life, has just been sitting in your root chakra waiting to uncoil like the snake? What if it was always there, because that's where your soul plugs into your physical body, is in the root chakra. That's where the plug-in is. This is where everything gets activated to return to source. A lot of people, there's two ways to enlightenment, right? You go up through the chakras or down through the chakras. If you
Mhm.
go down, you're sitting on a mountaintop and you're going to meditate for 20 years to get there. If you go up, you're accessing your vital life force energy. You're accepting the healing that has to occur in those regions and in those chakra centers, which is going to be sexual trauma. It's going to be, feeling safe, scarcity trauma, like all of the big fears that we have, fear of death, fear of the unknown, all the big fears that we have, a little bit of fear of judgment if you have shame and guilt around your sexual energy, which most people do, blah blah blah. But when we really activate that energy and hone in on that power, there's nothing in the world that can take your power away. Nothing. And then we can access unlimited frequencies to do things that are unimaginable. But Neptune is trying to imagine what this could be. It's dropping like little hints into our psyche and into our mind, saying, you could do that, like, who says you can't? Don't buy into anything you've ever been taught.
Right.
We're all goddesses and superheroes as far as I'm concerned.
Absolutely. Well, and my belief is that when, Jesus said we're made in the image and likeness of God, it's because we're creators. We are powerful creators. And I love what you talked about, circling all the way back to the beginning of this podcast. You talked about how we chose the time of our birth, we choose the time of our death, we choose our parents. And so that requires, if you're going to shift your mindset, you're going to say, okay, I buy that. That means you have to take radical responsibility for your life. It means that we are not victims to anything. And for a lot of people, that's a tough pill to swallow. But ultimately, this journey of waking up and healing and ascension that you're talking about requires that very mindset.
Yeah. And this time frame right now with the Virgo Pisces full moon and eclipse and solar eclipse, this is breaking the paradigm of victim consciousness.
Hmm.
Literally, it's letting it go. It's just breaking it down. It's allowing it to dissolve. And it's a hard one to do because then God, I'm responsible for how my life is manifesting or not manifesting, right? Like I'm responsible for everything. That is not easy. You know, we've not been taught to deal with an empowerment consciousness state, but this is really where we're asking ourselves to go to. Everyone, their hearts are asking it. Their bodies are asking. Every part of every single person on this planet is saying, you can feel so much better about everything if you just know that it's always been a choice.
Absolutely. And we're conditioned so early on because when we're children, we didn't have a choice, right? We could have been victimized by our families. We can't run, we can't fight back. And so we learn these paradigms that just don't serve us as adults. But when we look at this from the broader perspective of multiple lifetimes of astrology, we realize, okay, if we can really look at our life plan and say we did choose these difficult parents or these difficult early circumstances for our soul's evolution, because the very trials that we endure are usually the very places where we find our greatest strength, our greatest contribution to humanity, and our greatest power. And so when we realize that we were perfectly groomed, perfectly shaped for our roles in this world, as hard as that is, it can be a really empowering and beautiful thing.
Yeah, because we chose it, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
and there the part of us that's eternal, like we decide to come to this silly planet. You know, it's a this planet's a school, right? It's a playground. It is a school
Mhm.
where we can come, we can have certain types of experiences we can't have anywhere else on the planet or
Yeah,
anywhere else in the galaxies, right? It's
right.
very unique. It's very specific, and it's not easy either.
No.
You know, the vibrations that are here, there's more density. There's
Mhm.
more troublesome energy. There's more negative vibrations here than most other places. And so, but we choose that because we're saying, "Hey, we got this, you know, we got this. Maybe we can't come to help the rest of humanity because that's our calling, like a bodhisattva." You know, there's so many different ways that we can approach that, but the choice factor when you look at astrology, I think is the most freeing thing. And then you can choose like, okay, there's like a zodiac sign and a planet and a house placement that helps me understand who I am. I can grow from that and I can play out the low vibration of that, or I can play out the high vibration, or I could play out millions of vibrations in between those two. When you
Right.
learn your own astrology is when you feel the empowerment because you can go, gosh, yeah, I don't feel safe in the world because I got 3 planets in Cancer. My Venus is conjunct Saturn. Oh my goodness. You know, like I just don't feel safe, right? Like something's bad's going to happen, or I've got too much childhood trauma with that placement in the first house, or yeah, okay, cool. You can understand that logically, but then you can say, but it's a journey of learning how to love yourself. It's a journey of being responsible for caring for yourself and loving yourself as much as you do anybody else. So you can play with the themes that all of these things express to see where you played out the low side, to see where you played out the high side, and to see where you could grow in that, where you could
Right.
expand and where you can heal. And where when you truly heal a lower vibration in an astrology chart, you're looking at your chart now going, I got you. I understand that. Yeah, it might rear its ugly head through all these weird experiences because that's what happens when things get triggered. But that's okay because you have the awareness and then you're consciously co creating how you're going to respond instead of react to the energies that are present.
And I'll tell you, it is so settling to know, okay, I get this sneak peek. I know I'm going to be confronted with some things that I've confronted back then. But now I'm more resourced. Now I'm more prepared. And now I'm meeting myself in this trigger in a more evolved version of me. And I get to meet myself there deeper and heal it at a deeper level. And it's so freeing. And I want to talk just about, for listeners who maybe aren't familiar with astrology, there's two different types of readings, right? You're able to look at people's natal chart and then their solar returns where you get very different types of information. And I just want to make that distinction for people.
Yeah, well, and there's more than just that because you can
Okay.
do progress charts, you can do transits, you could do there's so many aspects of astrology and there's different branches of astrology. There's Western and there's Vedic. I personally do tropical Placidus astrology, which is more of a Western theme. I just have always learned that, and I kind of stay in my lane. I understand the other, but I don't have time to learn it as richly as I've learned this. So I just stay in my lane with that. And, the natal chart is basically taking a picture of where all the planets are when you were born, the exact time where you were born, the place you were born. This is where they were in the sky. And it creates a cosmic blueprint of energy that you dance to. All of those big energies, you walked into a room, you like came out of the birth canal, you took your first breath of life and you met all these planetary energies. And you're like, oh, so this is my first imprinting, basically, is where these planets are and what signs and how they're interacting with each other. And that's your natal chart. Now, every year on your birthday, you return to the exact degree point of when you're born. And that's called your solar return. And it happens either on your birthday, sometimes a day before, a day after. But that solar return will rule the next year for you. So you can look at your cycles. You can go ahead and go, oh my gosh, the next year, I'm going to be dealing with these types of energies. Then you can transpose it on your natal chart and see how similar or different it is and how they interact with each other. And there's also progress charts where you can progress to see where you're growing as a soul, so to speak, as you go forward in time. It's just the branches of astrology that you can study. You could go down rabbit holes for your entire life studying one planet or one sign because it is that rich of a study. It's so cool.
It really is. I know. And the more I hear you talk, I can hear it. You've had to learn a foreign language essentially, to learn it. But I could listen to you talk about this stuff literally all day long.
Yeah.
So let's go a little bit deeper into this. You called it a progress chart. So about how your soul is kind of making progress. And is that on the lessons that it chose to learn based on when you were born? Or how can you explain that deeper?
Yeah, it's based on when you were born. And then, every year, it basically your chart will kind of progress and move forward. Like usually it can move like a degree or something like that. The moon sometimes moves faster. And you can see how you are progressing on that soul's journey. It's one of those branches of astrology that some people really dive into. Personally, I like it, but I don't utilize it until people really understand their own makeup, because I don't want to get them confused. Because if you're a Libra and then all of a sudden you're progressing into Scorpio energy, what does that mean? Like you really have to understand the Libra vibe before I want to introduce a progress chart to most people. But it is about the soul's evolution and how you're growing into the different astrological signs and house placements. Now, the astrological signs all build on each other. It's like the circle of life. You come in with Aries energy, with this fire, you're just birthing into creation, you're catalytic, right? But then you got to drop in and figure out where you're going to plant your roots in Taurus. And then you've got to figure out how your brain operates in Gemini. And then you got to figure out how you feel safe in that all and build a home in Cancer and check into your heart and your feelings, right? Then you can get creative, put some things out there in the world, be it like that nice little Leo energy. But then you got to figure out how to organize that and make it work for you, so that you can do something with that creative vibe. You can manifest that mutable Virgo earth. Then you get to share it with people in Libra. You get to start partnering, sharing it in those one-on-one relationships. Then you cruise into Scorpio and you realize, whoa, who am I? Because there's more to me than what I just discovered. That's when you're digging into the soul. That's when you're digging into the deeper mysteries of your energy and your life and who you are as an eternal blueprint. Then you need those higher philosophies and isms, Sagittarius. You need those higher informations and beliefs and educations and just universal truths.
Yeah.
And then you have to figure out how to use that in the world, Capricorn.
Hmm.
You got to figure out, well, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to use it? And then how does it benefit the whole, Aquarius? And then how does it return you back to your eternal nature? So it's a cyclical energy when you're walking through these zodiac signs and
Yeah.
you're walking through, it's a cyclical energy that is constantly there. Constantly. So you could be a Gemini, but you could be moving into some Cancer energy too. You could be, moving into other things. So those progress charts can see how that evolves and
Wow.
how this is what you were born with. And then how have you been using it throughout these years?
It's so beautiful. I mean, just as humans, we are so incredibly complex and so influenced by so many different factors. And I love that astrology can just meet us in that complexity And it's something that's so universal and so cosmic, but it's also just as deeply microcosmic and just as deeply personal. I mean, it really blows my mind.
And it's not even complex, it's super simple. Like you
Right?
got you've got a planet, which is the energy, you've got the sign of how it's expressing that energy, and then you have the house of where it shows up in your life. It is that simple. It's like putting the pieces of a puzzle together, and then how they interact with each other as a whole. That's a whole nother, conversation, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's like we come into this world with some traits potentially that can be really challenging, right? Some people come in with big emotions and they don't know how to ground them. And some people come in with this monkey mind that they just can't seem to quiet. And, we all come in with these really unique challenges. And it's so cool because when you hear your natal chart reading for the first time, it really can reduce some of the shame of things that maybe you've struggled with, or when your parents, well, you're too much, or, why are you so difficult, or whatever. And then you look at your chart and you're like, well, because I set it up that way, because I needed all that energy for this contract that I have that I'd really like to fulfill in my time here on this planet. And without that tenacity, without that veracity, it was going to be impossible to accomplish it. And, I think seeing that your soul really chose those specific challenges and finding the ability to turn those challenges into gifts and strengths can be so profoundly rewarding for people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's important to know that it's okay to be who you are.
Hmm.
You came in with a very unique energy. And if you consciously work with that, you can shift your vibe to be more self loving, self accepting. And that right there is the key. That's the key to healing. That's the key to knowing who you are as a soul. That's the key to waking up spiritually, psychically, anything that you want to wake up within you, whether it's in your body, mind, or spirit, or your heart. You can wake it up by looking at it and loving it and accepting it, truly accepting it without fear, without judgment, without shame, without all of the things that we have to overcome to get to that place to love. But once you can look at it and be like, oh, that's just me. And that's just me because
Right.
you know what? I have a Mars and Virgo, or I have this and that, like that's just who I am. Yeah, I'm a workaholic, but look, it says it right there in my chart. I'm good.
I feel
Right?
really called out right now. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. It's just true though. It's so true. I know. It's also, I think, where astrology meets psychology, because I feel like the answer is the same as psychology. When I'm working with people, it's about how do we reduce shame and fear, and how do we bring more love? How do we bring more compassion to ourselves ultimately, and understand ourselves from a broader perspective? Get out of, the trauma loop that our brain's been stuck in. And I think astrology is absolutely a tool to help us see that, was just part of the co-creative process. And when we can see there is a way, there is a reason, and we can transmute this into a gift, it's really beautiful, and it helps reduce that shame, and it just brings more love.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
No matter what we aspire to do, no matter what we're doing right now or being or whatever our life looks like, if we can learn how to bring love and joy into those moments, you can transform your whole approach to life, which transforms your life.
absolutely. Well, and like you said, it taps us into that creative potential again, too, because when we realize it's so simple, it's a simple perspective shift that could radically change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
How does that show up in the stars? That's kind of another question. So let's say, because some people keep getting faced with the same challenge again and again and again. I see it, right? People who are stuck, they meet the same man again and again. He just has a different face, but he's like the same challenge. He's just like their dad or whatever. And some people tend to recognize it very quickly and like grow through it and move on to the next challenge. Like they conquered that boss and now they're leveled up and they've got a new boss. Does that show up in the stars too?
Absolutely. I mean, if you have a grand square and you've got a pattern, it's locking you in. It literally locks you into a pattern of being, right? That there's challenge after challenge after challenge after challenge. Squares can be like a T-bone effect. It's a 90-degree angle that just like, it's a trigger point. It's a trigger point it creates a lot of dynamic life force energy. So usually these people are supercharged, right? Have a
Yeah.
ton of energy, a lot of dynamic personalities, yet they have to deal with these dynamic challenges over and over and over. So the aspect aspects between the planets is how we are living our patterns. Like I have a sun moon opposition. So for me to see things in other people and take it personally is so easy for me to do, right? It's a
Mhm.
pattern. It's always going to be a pattern. It shows up all the time in every aspect of my life. But when I'm aware of that, I could see, okay, I'm just looking at a mirror. We're good. As long
Right.
as I understand that that opposition is a mirror and I got to bring it back home to myself, right? So we can see oppositions as mirrors. We can see squares as triggers. I know I'm going to get triggered because I have this square. And then we have gentle things that things just come easy to certain people, trines
Sure.
and sextiles. So the aspects of astrology lock in a lot of patterns. And sometimes the house placements, or if there's planets that are conjunct, or in a harsh aspect to each other, it can create family dynamics. It depends on the house placements, of course, work dynamics. And then depending on what liberates us and set us free, look at your Uranus, because those are going to be the unexpected things that liberate your consciousness, that liberate your life.
Can we talk about the houses real quick too? Because I don't know if everybody listening is familiar. I mean, when you get a reading done, you can look into every area of your life. You know what I mean? Because it's based on these house placements, which really addresses all aspects of life. I don't know if you want to run through that.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure. We have the first house. So this is our physical body. It's how people first feel your energy when you walk into a room. It's your I am presence that's just kind of all of a sudden there. And so this can be also early childhood energy. So if you have planets or aspects that really dive into that first house, you're going to be a little bit more highly conditioned or tightened in your conditioning sometimes, right? So
Yeah.
the second house is your resources. So this is your money. This is what you value though. So it's also your value system. So whatever you have in the second house will influence what you value. The third house is your mind, communication. It follows a lot like the zodiac sign, by the way. The third house is also brothers, sisters, siblings, neighbors. So you'll see a lot of that there. And short travel, like when you take short trips here and there, and how you like to, that also rules your nervous system, right? So all of these houses can have rulership in different areas of the body as well.
So interesting. Yeah.
I know. The fourth house is the home. This is the roots, where you lay down your roots. It can also rule mothers and the mothering energy, nurturing energy, patriotism. It can rule your ancestral energy, your DNA. It's the part of you that's most connected to the earth. And then you have the fifth house, which is your creative energy. It's also romance and your children. Sixth house, you have work, service, and health. And then seventh house, you have relationships and how you're balancing yourself with the outer world. These are typically one-on-one relationships, partnerships, marriages. Eighth house is where you explore your sexual energy, your relationship to death, and to really investigate the mysteries that are there for you. It can also deal with joint finances. So if you are dealing with financial things, you'll see a lot of that happen in the second and the eighth house. Then you have the ninth house, which is philosophies, religions, isms, the higher mind. Like once you have the lower mind in Gemini, the opposite side of that is Sagittarius. So we have the third house of communication, and then we have the ninth house of communication, but communication to what? Source,
Right.
universal truths, higher understandings. This is where you get to be the teacher, the educator. This can also be where you're elite, where you're an elitist. There can be lower vibrations in all of these places too.
So
The 10th
interesting.
house, yeah, the 10th house is your career, your reputation, what you're known for, how you actually are using your energy in the world and what people see. Because where all the planets were when you were born. This was the directly above you in the zenith of the sky, like straight ahead. So this is what you're going to be known for. And it can really influence your ambitions, your drives, your reputation. Then the 11th house is groups of organizations. These can be humanitarian groups. These can be groups of friends, so friendship circles. This can be a group of any type of energy that pulls it together into a group consciousness field. And then the 12th house is a very hidden house. So this is your inner world with your own spirituality, your own divine energy, what you believe, how you believe that, why you believe that. But it can also be a house that rules institutions. So these can be hospitalizations, these can be mental institutions, these can be where you hide from the world, right? Whether it's through drugs, alcohol, anything.
Kind of like the shadow aspects.
A little bit of the shadow, but definitely it's a hidden place, right? This is where we don't want to face reality, you know?
Yeah.
So I'll go do XYZ, or I'll find myself in prison, or, you can see that in the 12th house as well. So we have these house placements that help understand where we are really showing up and expressing certain qualities of energy. So yeah, you can see. And when these planets in the sky transit over these houses, they are influencing those aspects of your life, which is really, really important. So right now, if you were to look at where we have, 18 to 29 degrees of Virgo and Pisces, you're going to see exactly where you're letting go of little boxes and where you're dissolving things and returning to more of an all that is field, where your karma is dissolving as well, right?
Hmm. And so, I mean, that's something we're going through universally right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, how can people, how can this awareness kind of help them navigate? Because we're all being affected by this to some degree. And these dissolutions, before we can kind of pull it together and see the bigger picture, can be difficult to go through.
Yeah.
Any tips for
And it
that?
would really depend on your chart. If you
Yeah.
have planets and points that are being activated by how the planets are moving in there, if you have something, let's just use the next solar eclipse coming up at 29 degrees of Virgo. If you have anything around 29 degrees of Virgo or 29 degrees of Pisces, you are going to be more influenced by what's happening in the stars and the planets.
Interesting. Okay. So we're
And
not
then
all
you
impacted the same.
we're not all the same.
No,
And look around us. We are totally not all the same,
no,
right? There's some
no.
people experiencing some aspect of their lives and other people are experiencing different energies. We can't compare or contrast anybody
Right.
to how we are relating to these energies. We're all relating to them very uniquely through our birth charts and our natal charts. So, and then maybe even our solar returns as well. So we navigate these transiting energies. When you know your own chart, then you can start really looking at what's happening in the world and where it is affecting your chart. And
Okay.
once you know that, oh my gosh, I right now have Pluto on top of my moon. Why am I an emotional basket case every day? Oh my gosh, I'll tell you exactly why. This is going to last for a few years for me. I knew this going into it, right? Because Pluto moves so slowly. And I watched my friends go through Pluto on top of their moon. I was like, oh, I'm in for a big ride, right? So we can prepare ourselves and to know, why am I having memories from something I haven't thought about that in decades. Well, Pluto is uncovering some kind of truth in my subconscious that is asking to be worked through or healed or let go of, or who knows, transformed in some way. So it can bring up memories. Like there's when you get to that point where you can see what is happening for yourself,
Yeah.
it's using it as an empowerment tool, just like you would pull an oracle card every day or be guided by whatever. You can say, okay, I know this is going to happen, I know it's going to last for this amount of time, I'm not in the blind. So if I come home crying, I know exactly why. It's really profoundly affecting me. Or if I'm having these weird memories and I don't understand why, because it doesn't mean anything to me, well, something's being brought up to be worked through. And this is the planets that are kind of just pushing it to the surface of consciousness.
And it's crazy because you can literally see it on the day to day. I mean, whenever I've had a reading for you, you've printed out some of these transits several months in advance. And sometimes I'll just look at the week ahead to kind of emotionally or mentally prepare myself. And it'll say, oh, like you're gonna be real spicy this day and have some big emotions. And I'm like, maybe. You know what I mean? Because I'm feeling good. And sure enough, it's like you get to that day and you're just kind of like, oh yeah, I am feeling real spicy today and
Yep.
nothing feels like it's going my way. Like, thank God I can see that tomorrow, whatever this is going to kind of lift. But it's kind of nice just to almost ground into the fact that, because when you're in the hole, when you're having a hard day, it's hard to see outside of it sometimes and realize that tomorrow's
Yeah.
going to be a new day.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's going to be a better day. But this
You know,
helps you
I,
like, keep around the corner.
I had a dear friend whose partner committed suicide, and she wanted to look at the astrology of that day. And I was like, man, if he had just waited a couple more days, the whole vibration for him would have changed, you know?
Wow.
But it was also an exit point, right? It
Mhm.
provided an exit point and for his soul. And I believe that all of that is divinely timed, you know?
Yeah,
So you can see things like that too. Not that I don't ever really talk about timings of death, but I
sure.
do see potentials of exit points with certain aspects. I did a podcast with one of my friends on one of my podcasts, and we were talking about the Salem witch trials, and we looked up all these dates and things that were in common astrologically that were
Whoa.
happening between Pluto and Saturn and Mars. And we were just like, whoa. I mean, it blew my mind just to see that they were all players in the field in horrible or harsh aspects to certain things. And it was like, look at that, you know, it's all right there. You can go back and you can look at it, you know, you could pick apart history as much as you want.
It's so wild. So, okay. So there's no absolutes, right? I mean, there's no absolutes, I don't think. Maybe there are. But it's interesting because you talk about these exit points. We talk about co creation. And I do kind of think that we choose the time of our death. So maybe that is an absolute. And, it's been interesting. I'll have to explore this with you in private sometime. But I was doing a ceremony. And during this one particular ceremony, when I was really struggling, really digging up some deep early childhood trauma, my spirit guides during that ceremony showed me, Kristy, you had exit points. One of them was when I was really, really little. It was like I was 2 and I could have left then. My heart, I could have had a heart. I had a really big spontaneous healing when I was 4, but my spirit guide showed me that I had an opportunity for my soul to leave prior to it healing spontaneously. And when I chose to stay, my heart spontaneously healed, and it's in a medical journal. My other exit point was at 16 when I had a spontaneous lung collapse. I could have chose for that lung to push on my heart hard enough for me to leave and have another cardiac event at 16. And it's really fascinating. We'll have to explore that sometime because I'm so curious. But
Definitely.
these concepts are so interesting. It was so healing for me to become aware of that because I thought, what a brave soul I am
Hmm.
to know what I was going to have to endure in order to stay, and that my soul chose to endure it because it had a mission that it wanted to carry out. And it gave me this whole new reconceptualization of my trauma and of my life and of my story that was so incredibly healing. And so I love that you're able to explore that, as painful as those topics are, because I know
Yeah.
how therapeutic it was for me, for my spirit guides to show me that and to be able to see that. Like, what a brave soul we all are. I think just for being here on this planet at this time, we're very brave.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe a little crazy too.
This is gonna okay. I'm gonna take this way far left, and then I want to come back to another topic that keep everything you say is like pinging me with questions. Have you ever stood outside space time? Have you ever had the experience of like almost feeling as if your soul is straddling two worlds and you could see what it feels like to be outside of this construct?
Yes. And then coming back into it and how heavy and disjointed it feels. Yes.
Yeah. So I've been lucky enough to have that perspective a few times. And when I'm outside of it, the bliss that I felt, the unconditional love, the eternity that I felt, when you look at this life on earth, when you're there from that perspective, it's as if it's so short. It is
It's a
so
blink of an
brief.
eye.
And it's
Yes.
almost like this sick cosmic joke. Almost. That's how I felt when I was standing outside of it. Like, because when we're here, we're so limited in our perspective. And it's like, no, this pain is so real. And there's so many people suffering. And I would never look at them and be like, yeah, that's not real, because it is. But when
Yeah.
you're standing outside of space time and you can see suffering from that perspective, it's felt to me like this cosmic joke, because from there it's like I know we're all connected. Like, nobody ever dies. Like, it's so quick that we have to
Yeah.
be separated if we lose a loved one on this planet. So you just volunteer, like, yeah, I'll go to earth and like be here for this time and carry out this mission and do this thing, because it's going to be quick, it's going to be easy, and then I'm going to be here in a blink of an eye. But from here it certainly doesn't feel.
Right, right. And it takes a while to wake up to that level of consciousness. You know, some of us need to have our own experiences, our own awareness or integration of those frequencies. Some of us remember them
Yeah.
like hidden within us. I think hidden within all of who we are, we know. and we feel, whether we have those awakening experiences or not, or we connect to spirit guides, or maybe I think the aliens are brilliant about introducing oneness energy into our field of
Yes.
consciousness. They're like just waiting for us to wake up to it so that we can, evolve a little bit more and be a part of the family. But I
Yeah.
think, yeah, it's part of just the journey. But when we're here on earth, how do we make every moment divine? How do we create that field for ourselves? What are the daily things that we do to breathe that breath of life, of that eternality into every moment? Because that, when we can work on that, we can get to that point. We can be enlightened ascended masters on this planet. We've had so many examples saying it's possible. You can just do it, just do it. Here, this is how we're told how. It's in every spiritual script ever written. You have to decipher between other people's interpretations of it, but it's all right there. you know like, breathe in the breath of life in every moment of who you are, and you just be. And honestly, there are two jobs that we have in any lifetime: to find yourself and to be yourself. And finding yourself is the easy part. Being yourself, that takes some work sometimes. We got to get through, we are conditioned beings. We are born under like strict cultural norms. But you know what? Better than a couple thousand years ago. We've evolved a little bit, and we're
Mhm.
evolving a little bit more quickly, I would say, in the last 100 years than we've had in a long time. So we're getting there.
I completely agree. I completely agree. I mean, we have the ability to have this conversation today, where we can talk about these concepts that we would have been condemned for not too long ago,
Yeah.
and it's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
I
So
love
with
that you
that,
said,
yeah,
yeah.
gratitude, love, and breathe the breath of life of who you are in every moment. If you just take one moment and take a breath, receive your breath of life, exhale, receive your breath of life, exhale. You just spend moments like that. When you're in the bathroom, when you're washing your hands at work, when you need like a breather, take your breather. It's called taking a breather for a reason, right?
Absolutely.
Returning into that eternality. And remember that everybody is working to do that. And
Mhm.
we're all here to do that.
Yeah.
How do we become shining examples and shining lights that it's possible on this planet? Because when your light is shining, when you're in your breath of life, when you're in the frequency of love, everyone around you can tap into that if they choose to, and be a part of that, because we are one.
You build a bridge, right? With
Mm-hmm.
your consciousness and showing people what is
Yep.
possible through your own actions, your own behavior, your own living example. You create that bridge of possibility. And in my opinion, that's exactly what Christ did. That's what the Buddha did. All the enlightened masters. That's what Kuan Yin did. These people who were shining examples of what it meant to step into their light body and to move in and out of this realm, to defy death. They showed us how. And so the roadmaps are there. You're exactly right. It's just we've kind of been conditioned to put that authority in other people's hands
Yeah.
and not use it for ourselves, but it's all here. And I think we're waking up to that reality. And that's what excites me the most about living
Yeah.
in these times is that that's what we're shifting into.
Yes. And nothing's physical. It's all energetic. If you can build it, you can build your body, you can unbuild your body, right? If you manifest a project in your life, you can unmanifest that project. It is the cycle. It is all an eternal cycle within that breath of life. And so we just don't realize how powerful we are, because we've been taught and conditioned that this table is physical. Well, it's not. It's just energy. Our bodies are physical. No, this is energy. So once we really get to that place where we are powerful, energetic beings, then we'll learn how to take our bodies with us and translocate and do all the fun things I know we can do.
Yeah, Jesus said it. All these things I can do, you can do and more. Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Oh my gosh, Maggie, thank you so much for this conversation today. If people want a reading with you, and by the way, if you guys are struggling with your relationship too, Maggie can actually take your chart and overlay it onto your partner's chart and do all kinds of cool things with your romantic relationships. So if you are wanting to know more about your soul's plan, if you're kind of like, okay, this resonates, Maggie, how do they reach out to you to get a reading?
Yeah, just go to my website, maggieclark.net. All the information's on there. You can find it.
Perfect. And we will link all that information in the show notes too. So thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thanks. All right, guys, until next time.